Bonjour à tous. Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Christophe Forêt with the Fair Institute. I'm the co-chairman of the Paris chapter. I'm also the co-founder with Tom Callahan of Cerisk. And I'll be your master of ceremony this morning. Over 6 years ago, when we started, Tom and I, we'd set up those type of fair chapter events. And usually we were about 5 of us, that is including Tom and I. So you can imagine how thrilled we are today that over 100 of you came from all parts of Europe and the world, sometimes the first time in Paris. Thank you, Jack. And today we have representatives from regulatory authorities, from international law firms. We have executive from the risk management function. We have cybersecurity experts. And we're going to discuss, debate, explore ways to improve the way we all together as a profession improve or may improve further the risk management and the cyber risk management activities. As our economy and society continue to rely increasingly on anything digital, the need for better understanding and a better management of cyber and technology risk continues to grow. Board and executives are demanding improved visibility and a better understanding in order to improve decision making. Regulators, and we'll have some of them again expand on this later on today, regulators are asking for more defendable governance and disclosure of cyber risk to ensure the highest digital trust between all stakeholders. And indeed, we as digital citizens expect that cyber risk, putting us at risk, are mitigated. Current attempts are sometimes not very efficient, making things worse, and quite costly. The FAIR standard has established itself as the risk model of choice for organizations aiming to provide better visibility into cyber risk using a language that business can understand, a financial one. FAIR programs help organizations quantify the value of their investment in cybersecurity in terms of bottom line impact. This is the condition for cost-effective management of cyber and technology risk. To this theme, managing risk management in the age of new disclosure rules will allow us to learn best practice from many industry experts present today, engage in interactive Q&A, and network with one another during the breaking sessions. Before we begin, the summit and the FAIR Institute would not be possible without the support of our technical advisor, SAFE, and our many sponsors. FAIR Institute sponsors are selected partner companies that have developed solutions that can help with the adoption of FAIR as part of the risk management practice. We would like to thank the SAFE Security as the technical advisor of the Institute. We also want to thank the FAIR Institute sponsors, Protiviti, Ostrich Cyber Risk, and Cerisk. And we want to thank today's event sponsor, Citalead. A final note, the entire event and set of sessions are being recorded, and they'll be edited and shared within the next few weeks. Now, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our esteemed keynote speaker and good friend, Nick Sanna, founder of the FAIR Institute, speaking today on managing risk in a time of new incident disclosure rules and how FAIR plays a necessary part. Welcome, Nick.
Well, good morning, everybody, and bonjour. Good morning, and then we can continue here. It's great to have a microcosm of Europe here. It's, I think, the United Europe of cyber risk. So big pleasure to be here as a European myself. It's great to see the community developing, because solving this problem really takes a village. It requires, people from the community to come together, whether it's academics, whether it's practitioners, vendors, and other industry experts. So let me first test our system here. So this is actually working. So the theme of today is, mastering cyber risk in an age of new disclosure. And that's significant because there are some things that are changing in the ecosystem, and governments have a role to play here as well. And but first, I want to start, the presentation by talking about something that to many of you may seem obvious, but is not yet for the industry. And this is about cyber risk, being a business risk. It seems obvious to you, and I think when we look at just the sheer numbers, the amount of losses that we as organizations are experiencing in the world is now, I think, $9 trillion. These economical impact on organizations on a yearly basis due to cyber attacks. 3 times the GDP of a country like France. So if somebody doesn't believe that, cyber risk is a business risk, they should, think again. I just came from the States, where I'm based for business, and we just had a very disruptive cyber attack this past week, where the main service to basically dispatch drugs, prescription drugs, and payments for these drugs has been down for a week. And suddenly hospitals couldn't order medicine, providers couldn't be paid, and the whole system came to a halt. Small example of cyber risk being business risk. My neighbor, I saw him 2 weeks ago walking the dog in the middle of the day. It's like, what's going on? You usually go at 6 o'clock in the morning, then you're at your computer all day. It's like, we are down. We've been down for 4 days. I'm an insurance company. We're under ransomware attack. We've been down for 4 days. So if these are the realities that we're experiencing today at the worst level, is this how we treat it in our organizations? Are we treating cyber risk as business risk? And the unfortunate answer in many organizations, the answer is no. We're still treating it like a technical problem, like a technology problem. And that's a problem, because if we treat it as a technology problem, we're going to do a lot of busy work. We're going to try to look for a list of best practices, go down the list, and how well the technical compliance serve us in terms of addressing this problem. Of course, it's good to have a reference thing, but if you keep yourself busy trying to be compliant, perfectly compliant, it's a never-ending challenge and you cannot win that battle. And basically, we find ourselves doing compliance work and busy work and not focus on the economics of the problem. And so, so this event is going to help us basically reflect on what does it take to address cyber risk as a business risk. And this community, its goal is to help bridge that gap between technology and the business in ways that hasn't been done before. The economics are important here, because the economics are evolving. So on one side, you have the adversaries. They have a leg up because they're exploiting the advantages of the internet. It's an open forum for doing business. Security was an afterthought in computer systems and on the internet, and so they're taking advantage of it. And with the advent of AI and automation, the cost of your hacks is going down. So the economics for the bad guys are actually improving. You can now go on some open AI forums and get the latest hacks and modify it slightly and have a very original and very efficient way of hacking. And there's many companies on the dark web offering great services to hack companies at very low cost with guaranteed results. They have help desk, they have support systems, like legitimate companies. They are that organized, and they will guarantee results. You apply this hack, you're going to get this many data points. This is a return on ransomware, guaranteed. How's the economics going on the defender side? Not very good in the last few years. Cybersecurity cost has gone up. We're still getting breached at an increasing rate. And for the most part, we have not been able to understand the effectiveness of our security controls and understand the ROI of what we're doing. So we have a disadvantage here. So there's an imbalance there. The economics for the attacker is going better, and the economics for the defender is going worse. So it definitely was not trending in the right direction. The reason we're here is because we need to change that economics. And we're going to discuss today what does it take to do that. And so there is some hope because there are some trends in the industry, that some forces that are basically should help us turn the tide here and change the economics of the problem. So one is that people at the top of the companies are taking notice. You know, I've been fortunate enough to be a contributor to the publication of this handbook in the States. This is the National Association of Corporate Directors. You know, people sit on boards, and they publish, you know, this is their #1 publication across all governance documentation, which is the Directors Handbook on Cyber Risk Oversight. And they're noticing because the impact on the bottom line is becoming really significant, you know? And the buzzword in the States right now is cyber risk is material. You know, the World Economic Forum is saying after climate-induced risks, the #1 risk after that is cyber risk. So board members now are worried about, because they read the newspapers, they see the company being down for a few days when they get attacked or incurring a lot of cost. And they want to ask smarter questions. And their questions oftentimes are economical in nature. So they're going to ask better questions. And my question to us as an audience, are we prepared to respond in tone? Are we prepared for those better questions? And so if you haven't, I'm going to give you also some tips throughout here. If you haven't looked at this document, you want to download it. It's free on the NACD website. Look at Director's Handbook, because at least in the States, but this is now being translated in many European editions as well, you're going to see directors asking smarter questions such as, how much risk do we have? So you're telling me we are mature on a scale 1 to 5 for NIST-CSF or ISO on the controls, but what does 3.5 mean? What does it mean? Because we need to make business decisions, and I don't know what to do with 3.5. And if you want $20 million to go from 3.5 to 4, what does it mean in terms of risk reduction? Are we investing on the right things? If you give her the $20 million that you're asking as a CISO, can you get risk to an acceptable level? These are all very fair questions. So by the way, pun intended here, you know? Very fair questions here, and that we need to be equipped on how to answer. The good news is that they're starting to notice. Because I've been speaking to many of you in the past and saying, I get it, we need to treat cyber risk as a business problem, but my boss doesn't get it. The board doesn't get it. The leadership doesn't get it. But it's starting to change, okay? Not everywhere, but it's starting to change. We're starting to see, take notice of that. So educate your board, download this document, educate your own board members, send it to them as a resource, because if you want to be in sync with them, this is a great resource in educating them as a steward of cyber risk in the organization as well. The other thing is that something is changing on the business side, where companies are facing both the urge to go faster, to continue to grow, despite the headwinds in the economy, but in a more efficient way. I'm going to give you an example. I was the other day speaking with the CISO of Lloyds Banking Group in London. And he's telling me, what is your problem? It's like, Nick, listen, as a business, our biggest challenges right now competitively is the non-bank financials. These online banks that provide very agile services, very easy to use, with much lower cost of support, and we have a hard time keeping up because we have legacy, we have branches, we have a lot of ecosystem, and they're going, and we need to react fast. And so the business leaders in charge of the new business units are looking at us as security. Can you help us launch these products fast and securely? And he says, my old model, which was based on compliance, is too slow. It requires too many people. I cannot keep up with that. And so I need to find a way to have a risk-based approach to the problem that allows me to go faster, securely. So I need to change the paradigm. And by this time, I'm looking at, he's a member of the FAIR Institute, is looking at FAIR as a way to change the way you're looking at the problem. No longer as a pure technical compliance problem, but as a risk problem where you can partner with the business and make decisions on what's the right level of security for the new product we're launching so we don't crash on landing, okay? And so this is very important. Again, it's another, I would say, emphasis on why there is hope there, because the business has needs, and we as practitioners need to become partners, indispensable partners in the business. So the business doesn't get in trouble as they launch new products, as they transform the company digitally and invest in growth. So speed is important here. And so in the risk management profession, doing assessment that take 3 months, the qualitative in nature or technically focused, doesn't cut it. They need answers in days. They need answers right away. I'm launching this next week. What are my options? Whoa. Right now, the answer is like, wait a minute, I'm going to give you an answer in a month or two. Too slow. Okay? So the pace and the demands on the profession is really changing as well. The other thing, and this is the undertone for the conference here, regulations. There is a change in regulations. In the last 10, 15 years, a lot of focus on regulation has been on compliance. And all the standards organizations have been rushing out to basically give companies guidance on best practices. But I think we're taking that best practice really literally. We have to do everything. Well, out of the 110 best practices out of NIST cybersecurity framework, some practices may have a lot of effect on reducing risk in your company, and some may don't. But yet we go down the list and treat it equally across companies and not being able to discriminate, understand what is effective and what is not. And the regulators noticed, we have gone down the list. We are busy. We're still getting hacked. We're not even winning the war. We need to change the paradigm. And we started seeing it coming from the States. We have seen the change happening, and it started with Congress. Congress made an analysis and said, how do we change the war on cyberspace? And one of the conclusions from this committee, industrials, these were technology leaders, policymakers as well, is that we need to think in economical terms. We need to think in risk terms. Like the adversaries. The adversaries want to focus on what matters, go where the money is. We need to think about security is protect what matters most and double down with the tools that are most effective and ditch the others versus going down the list uniformly. And in the States, since July, the stock market, regulatory authority, the Security and Exchange Commission, issued a new rule on cybersecurity. I just here had a quote that basically says, you need to provide shareholders visibility into risk because they need to make economically based decision whether to invest in your company or not. And they need to factor in, when they invest in a company, you factor in the risk. If you're, I know that Maersk is in the room here, and so if you're a logistic company, you need to talk about disclose your supply chain risk possibilities. But because your process is digital, you also need to disclose your cyber risk. And so the authority says, you need to basically disclose cyber risk the same way you disclose any other type of strategic business risk. That's just normal. And that has provoked a big reaction, a sea change. At the beginning in the States, it's like, oh my God, regulation over, overreach. But we need to change a different way. I think it's a very healthy change of tone from the regulators, making us think from the business perspective, not just technology perspective. And so they're starting to say things, you need to take this seriously. In your yearly filings, you need to tell us what your top risks are. Of course, you're not going to disclose it in the detail that would profit the adversaries, but you need to tell us enough. So when we come in and ask you to a question, you tell me what's the model you use to assess the risk, how do you come up with the assessment of materiality, and how you prioritizing. Same thing when an incident happens. Now in the States, public companies, they have 4 days to disclose that they have a material incident and they're doing something about it so that investors can make an informed decision on whether to continue to invest and back up the company or maybe sell the stock, et cetera. So that is a change in mindset. So regulation can help if it's seen from the positive perspective. So I think we need to be careful not to put the pressure on the CISOs and have a gun at their head saying, if there's a breach, you're responsible, et cetera. Really what the regulation aims to do is saying, cyber risk is a business problem. US companies and public companies need to take this seriously at the management level, not just at the cybersecurity level. And we're seeing the change in behavior in American companies, where many companies now are starting things like a materiality committee, where in this committee, you have the CISO, the CAO, the general counsel, the marketing guy, the business guys in the same room to basically say what is material to us. When an incident happens in cybersecurity, what is material to the business, what's not? Because it has business undertones. And that determination and how much risk we're willing to accept as a business is a business decision. It's not a technical decision. So as a profession, we need to start seeing ourselves as solution providers, not as the owner of risk. The business owns the risk. So these regulations are really have that in that mindset, and in helping change the way you think of risk and how you report on it and how you manage it. By the way, in the States, the regulation even doesn't require you to be good at this. They want you to be transparent so that the investors can make a decision whether you're worth your money as an investor or not, okay? But definitely a forcing function. In Europe, things are starting to change. You know, NIS2 is coming out, and so every state part of the European Union needs to come with legislation and implementation methodology for NIS2. And NIS2 basically for all companies that are in critical sector, which has been expanding as a definition, not just very large company, also medium-sized company that are in critical sectors. And they have some of the similar requirements that we've seen in the States. Very strong requirements in terms of disclosure of risk, but overall a call for better risk management practices, you know? Same thing in the financial sector with DORA, where entities must implement more stringent, governance structure and risk management process to identify, manage, and mitigate risk effectively. This goes further than the rule in the States, because this actually requires you to have a model, explain to the regulator how you're making effective decisions in managing risk. In the States, they don't require that. They want you to be transparent. Are you good, are you bad? What is your process? In Europe, the regulators, especially in the financial sector, will tell you, show me your process, how you're prioritizing your issues, and are you doing according to risk? Can you focus on what matters most? And show it, prove it to me. Using a formal model that you can stand behind it. And FAIR, of course, is very well positioned to help with that. And things continue. Last year I had the privilege of being, some of here in the room, one of the sponsors was there as well, and we had a Middle East summit, and in Jordan, which is basically the reference for cybersecurity standards in the Middle East, they changed their framework to move to a risk-based frameworks. And basically one of the 5 pillars of cybersecurity now in their country and now spreading across the Middle East is that organizations need to promote the concept of cybersecurity economics to help, develop, sophisticated, economically driven cyber risk measurement that blend into the business plans. So they're basically saying cyber risk needs to be blended in your business plan, in how you run your business, not an afterthought, not just a technical problem. So what I'm saying here, governments are trying to help. If they're pushing us, an organization, to a risk-based approach, it's major progress than just going down the checklist of technical compliance. And I think very welcome change there. So what is our mission as an institute? So our mission of the institute is to provide us with the arguments, with the models, with the examples, and the tools to help bridge that gap between technology and the business. Because cybersecurity has been treated like if you go to every cybersecurity forums, you're going to find a lot of solution providers talk about the latest way to protect from hacks, the latest threat intelligence tool, the latest endpoint detection tool. But they don't speak about what it means in terms of risk. Or if they do, it's very partial. It's not always in business context. And so our forum is here, our meaning is to bridge a gap, to be the translator between the technology and the business. And you in the room are those translators. Because in your company, we have a lot of technologists, we have a lot of business people, but very few people are capable of being that bridge between these two worlds. And so as an institute, we want to equip the industry, turn this into a science of turning technology, readings into business significance, into risk that business can factor in their decision making. And so a little bit about the institute. For some of you, the institute is a known entity. For many of you, it's a new thing. So we are a nonprofit, expert and research-driven organization, and the focus is really to elevate the profession and turn cyber risk management and operational risk management into a science. It used to be an art where people used to use their intuition to come up with beautiful heat maps with a lot of colors and a lot of qualitative statements, but it needs to turn into business science like any other form of risk management. And it has expanded beyond my expectation. It's a volunteer organization. We only have one full-time paid employee on staff to tell you, but it's despite of that, there's so many people contributing to the organization that now it's being recognized as one of the 3 most influential organizations in the cybersecurity industry. That's the impact we're having. So we have an impact also on regulators, on how companies think and act on risk. the reach has been very, very far-reaching. And we have 50% of Fortune 1000 represented, trained 10,000 people on the standards, and growing every day. We have many universities teaching the process. I know Jack Jones, the author of FAIR, we are lucky to have him here today, teaches at Carnegie Mellon University, which is the #1 university in cybersecurity in the States. But in the States, Stanford and Harvard, they have courses on FAIR, and these courses are spreading worldwide as well. We have many chapters in Europe. We have a FAIR chapter in Paris. We have one in London, one starting in Switzerland, one starting in Germany, and growing. So the good news is the community is growing. The number of people that are coalescing and joining the movement is growing, and the world needs this, needs this. And I don't think in Europe we'll be content until we'll start seeing a model like FAIR being well ingrained in local, policy. And so we want FAIR to sound like, we were joking with Jack beforehand, FAIR needs to stand for French analysis of, of information risk, German analysis of information risk, or British analysis of information risk. And so ways to go there, but you can be the leaders in your own countries, and the examples that a better way of managing and assessing risk can be done, and be living examples of that. And so as an institution, last year we made a big change, based on the demand of the members. Our members told us, you're creating a forum for us to have a dialogue, to learn from one another. But there's many problems that have been unsolved in the industry. Can we create working groups, research groups, expansion of the standard where we can tackle those problems together? We can get the best experts in the industry, in the world, on that topic, and advance our profession and turn it into a real science. So I want to talk about some of the agenda topics at the FAIR Institute. So first of all, FAIR, as many of you know, was born out of a very simple, elegant model to model risk, and quantify risk. But FAIR is becoming plural. It's no longer just the original FAIR quantification model or way to scope risk. It is now turning into many other ancillary standards. The first one we released last year was a standard on materiality. Basically, what I heard from the industry that the way FAIR was breaking down the losses was not sufficiently detailed. And they basically told us, if you want us to have an impact in our discussion with the CFO, with cyber insurance, with the business, we need to go about the forms of losses specifically in the way they do it, how a CFO would account for it in his balance sheet. And so we released, the FAIR material assessment model breaks down forms of losses like a CFO would. And so you'll find materials on this, and we'll not go into detail. It's not a course on the FAIR standards, but you can learn more about it on the website. So there was a major development that for companies who need to report on materiality in the States because of the CCE rule or because of NIS2 in Europe, as legislation gets into effect, great reference saying, we are assessing risk in quantifiable terms according to a standard. Not something we come up with, that we need to have a hard time to defend, not something proprietary, but something that has been peer validated and established as a national standard. The second thing, which I think is more revolutionary than even the original FAIR, is FAIR-CAM. So COVID had one positive thing in the FAIR community, is that Jack Jones and some other people had time to think. Lots of time on your hands, not traveling anymore and living in a hotel. And one unachievable problem in FAIR was that we didn't have in FAIR an objective way to measure control's effectiveness. So the control piece required, measuring the control effectiveness required originally a good analyst, then understand the FAIR model, and then try to understand how the various controls map to the standard and do a lot of interpretation of it. What Jack has done in terms of the research in the FAIR-CAM has provided an objective and granular way to measuring the effectiveness of every single control, but then also controls as a system. How do controls are interdependent? How do they work with one another as a system to reduce risk? And what is the effect on risk? So this is something very, very powerful, probably even more revolutionary than the original FAIR, because it also helps bridge the gap between the people who are doing cybersecurity on the operational side and the risk people. There was no connective tissue there, no analytics model, and FAIR-CAM is that analytics tissue. And so we'll learn more about how to apply this and how it's being done later today. And then, of course, the new buzzword right now is AI. It used to be ransomware, how we defend against ransomware, and right now it's all about AI. All the discussions I'm having with many CIOs and CISOs is about how can we assess the risk of AI? because my business is already gone. They're already using AI in the call center. They're using it in engineering. They're using it in marketing. And now the business is saying, oh my God, this is getting out of control. Are we in trouble or not? What are the practices where it is safe to use generative AI to augment our ideation, to augment our productivity, and be more efficient in the process? And where does it get us in trouble? And do we need to shut it down? Do we need to implement controls? These are the questions du jour. So at the FAIR Institute, we have a working group that is focusing on that and already has some preliminary findings, and we'll hear from some of the specialists today on what are some of the best practices with a FAIR mentality in terms of how you tackle AI risk. So, and some more. Another theme, research theme here, and you can see here, the research is quite deep and quite expansive here. It's on third party. What we're hearing from the community is that this is still an unresolved problem. We're trying many different ways of making sense of third party. We throw people a bunch of questionnaires and try to see how well they're doing against a set of compliance checklist. People lie on questionnaires, or the questions are badly asked. It's always yes or no, and you don't understand how these are configured. So in many cases, it's useless, yet it gives a sense of confidence we're going to understand how the third party is doing. Or we may have partial view of things. We have a lot of rating vendors that are trying to ping the websites of these companies and give you a rating to understand how well they're doing, but they don't go inside the company to understand how things are going. And then there's vendor management who's trying to do due diligence on their business capabilities. But by the way, all these tools don't talk to one another. And you have multiple departments in the company trying to make sense of cyber risk. And the CISO is like, I have no view on my cyber risks there. And so basically the call to the community, how do we make sense of it? How do we solve this problem? So we have a working group here, and we have our head of research of Institute, Pankaj, who is here in the front row, who's going to tell us about some of the research we're doing at the Institute and the progress we're making very fast. And then cyber insurance. You'd think cyber insurance would figure it out? When we talk to cyber insurance companies, we learn that what they do to assess risk many times is sending them questionnaires or doing outside-in assessments. And then saying, we feel that based on this rating, your risk more or less risky, and here slapping you this out-of-the-box policy. And the buyer's like, this policy doesn't cover all my risk, has a lot of exclusions. What's the correlation between the probable loss and the premium I'm paying? And the insurance company cannot answer. What happened in cyber insurance also with ransomware, they didn't have good underwriting models. And the claims in the last 2 years were much higher than the premiums they were collecting. And a lot of companies, incurred losses there, which basically revealed the big lie in the industry, which is we don't have a good way of modeling cyber risk in insurance. That was the ugly truth. Now that incurred losses, what happened? When crisis hit, we need to try harder and look at things differently. And so what we're seeing in cyber insurance as well, they're looking at models like FAIR to rethink the underwriting model and trying to assess what is actually the risk this company is facing, what type of risk, the amount of risk, so I can insure that. And no longer just focus on what we have seen historically, which is not very deep as a list. So as you can see, our research agenda institute is very rich. I wanted to share this with you to tell you there's a lot of smart people around the world who are focusing on these problems. We welcome also your help. If you're interested in engaging the Institute, go to the front desk and tell us, hey, I want to be engaged, take my name, have the response of that working group contact me, and we'll figure out a way to get involved and contribute to this. So this will take a village, again. This is not something, risk is a very, I would say, is a multidisciplinary, discipline. It requires an understanding of economics, of risk, especially in cybersecurity, mathematics, and statistics, and so requires a village. We need the contribution of practitioners, of vendors, of academics, of regulators, and wider government to work together as a system to figure this problem out. So I feel fortunate that we are in this industry helping shape this, this industry and turn this into a science. So, and I want to thank you for your contribution, because without this room, we cannot figure this out. So for the rest of today, let's really support one another in learning from one another's experiences, because every conference, every summit like this should elevate our level of understanding of what it takes to do risk. We bring it back, we practice new things, we learn, we come back and elevate it again. And so every year that we meet, we should see the progression move forward, and us turning that tide on the economics, you know. One last thing I want to say, because we're in Europe, and I'm European, but also I'm American as well. And I see a difference. Some people tell me, why is the community in America so much bigger? And why not in Europe so as big yet? And the ugly truth is that America cares about money. America cares about money. And if they lose money, they want to stop it really quickly. And so if cyber risk is about money, the forward-thinking company is like, I'm going to embrace that. I want to use my way of dealing with cyber risk and manage a competitive advantage and get serious about it. That's why many companies in America are forward-thinking, and they're not waiting for the regulators to tell them what to do. In Europe, we don't always think that way. In Europe also, we have been, in many cases, very busy with privacy regulation and didn't have time to think about cyber risk holistically, not just as it relates to the individual. And by the way, I would like a balance there as well, because in the States, we care about cyber risk, manage cyber risk for the corporation, and my privacy secondary, okay? I'd like to have a little bit of that come into the States, but here in Europe, we don't, you know, as organizations, we focus a lot on regulation. So the change in regulation, if it helps spur a change in mentality, is very welcome in Europe as well. But we need to show the regulators and our peers that this can be done. And you can gain competitive advantage. You can reduce waste in investing in security that doesn't make a difference, and double down on business processes that keep you safe while running fast. That's the example we can be for the industry. So that's very much needed. So I would say we can learn from each other's experience across the Atlantic, you know. With that, I want to, you know, open the proceeding and welcome and have Christoph welcome the first panel. But thank you very much for being here. Yep.